Hey everybody, it's Professor Diffley. This is History 114, History of Springfield. This is Module 2. So this is the first of the lecture videos that I'll provide for all the modules going forward. Again, this is the first one, so I'm going to take a little time to show you how all this works, that sort of thing. Again, the modules, lecture slides will be structured in many the same ways, so will the videos, that sort of thing. Remember, you still got to do all the required reading. The lecture slides and what I'm going to do in the videos here is just talk about some of the, tell some stories about it, expand on some things like that. But, you still got to do the readings, watch the videos, that whole thing there. So, and one thing, again, so I said in the intro video, the overview video, I give you a module. For each module, I give you lecture slides, and these are the first ones. And so when you open it, it often looks like this, and you see, as you click through, you see the different slides. But I also give you notes to these, and not for all the slides, individual slides, but many of them. And that includes a lot of additional information, like let me go down to one to find that we'll talk about, but where I give you a lot of extra information. Okay, like this. So hunter-gatherers, this sort of thing. Now, how do you view them? There is a folder in there that tells you how to view them. If you view these in Google Slides, it automatically shows you the notes underneath as well. But if you're in PowerPoint, the way you do this, you get two options. You go up to View, and you can go to, where is it? Notes page, right? And so what it will do is give you the notes, the slide and the notes all on one page. But, this is the normal view of it. The other way is down here. It says Notes. Just click it, opens it up. Right, and so this is, I give you a lot more information. This is sort of like part of the text sort of things I'll say, but also in, I would have said in person, I'll say in here, but it's also a way for you to have it in multiple formats. So always make sure to look at the notes, very important, especially in a course like this where we don't have a required text. Okay. Obviously go through all that. You have any questions, play around with it, just let me know, and I'll get back to you. All right, so let's get into this. Let's go through the Module 2 slides. So we're talking about Springfield history in this course, but we got to start is, where did this all come from, right? The history of this area, it goes well beyond before, European settlement, things like that. So this first module is really on Native Americans of the Connecticut River Valley, before European arrival. So this is before the end of the, not just European arrival in the Americas like Columbus, but also, English settlement and French settlement, Dutch settlement of North America. And we'll get into all that. That's actually will be Module 3 is where we're looking at that. But here we're going to talk about that. So before we get into that, just some overview terms and concepts, history terms, concepts, things like that you may or may not be familiar with. So I just want to go over them. Here, so one, prehistory. Well, what does that mean? Prehistory, you've heard this term prehistoric. What that means is the era of human existence and even others, before humans, before there was the written word, right? Especially with humans before the written word. Is one thing as a historian where you have documents and all this other evidence where you could read multiple sources. Where we're starting here, with the Native Americans, the first peoples of this area, they didn't have a written records, right? And so a lot of our knowledge about them is harder to come by, and that's something we're going to talk about in this. So, but that's what prehistoric means. Before there was written word, before especially for humans. Going back further, it's before going back to the dinosaurs. We're going to talk about a little geology here too in a bit. But just some other terms, again, prehistoric, we usually talk about the Stone Ages. So we were talking about Paleolithic age. This is the Old Stone Age, right? Paleo meaning old, lithic meaning stone, dating from about 200,000 BCE to 10,000 BCE. This is, early human societies such as hunter-gatherer groups, right? There's no civilization yet, right? There's no cities. There's no anything like that. So this is really, the earliest of human societies. Then you have the Neolithic age, the New Stone Age, dating from about 10,000 to 4,000 BCE, where humans begin to change from their hunter-gatherers to settle into larger groups and civilizations, have more permanent towns, things like that. Some we'll talk about, especially the invention of agriculture, which is the Neolithic Revolution. It starts first in the Near East, what we would call Mesopotamia, the Middle East today, Tigris, Euphrates River Valley. And we're going to see, though, that's the first one, around 10,000, 8,000 BCE. Eventually, agriculture will spread or be invented across the globe in different areas. In the Americas, we're talking about, anywhere around 6,000 to 5,000 BCE. So clearly later than this, but that's what the Neolithic Revolution is. Invention of agriculture, domesticating animals, and the changes in human society that occurred. And it did change, right? You went from being nomadic, semi-nomadic, hunting and gathering all your food, hence the term hunter-gatherer, to growing it, right? Domesticating animals such as sheep and things like that. For their wool, their hides, their meat, and their dairy and other things. And we'll talk about, because it's a little different here in the Americas than everywhere else on the planet in what this happened. But yeah, also people settled down. And it really did change how humans live. So this is really a turning point. At the end of the 20th century, they polled all these historians what was the most important thing in human history so far. Invention, and agriculture was number one because it really does change everything. And that's something I would support, that argument there. But all right, moving on to more. So here's the thing. If we're studying prehistory, there's no records, all right? Those people aren't alive anymore to tell us. There might be oral stories, but, oral traditions. But we know, if you ever played the game of, telephone as a kid, in kindergarten or something like that, where you say one thing and you whisper it to the person next to you and it goes all the way around the room, you know how it gets distorted. That's, any story is like that. But oral stories still have a great value, right? It really does, because it reflects what the people believe in. What's important to them. There is, the belief is there is some truth, somewhere in there, but it makes it hard to understand and study them. So how do we do it? And so these are some of the ways. Well, one is demography. We try to, people leave behind items, artifacts, waste, all sorts of things. Their old structures where they live. And so demography, though, is, and that's archaeology, which we're talking about in a second, but demography is we try to figure out how big these groups were, right? Vital statistics. I mean, how can you tell how big a group is? Well, if you find a settlement, you can tell by the amount of structures there were. How big were the structures? There will often be garbage, essentially, a garbage dump. They call it a midden left behind. You could, extrapolate from how much food waste and others that they left behind, how many people must have lived at that site, right? And again, like I said, you could extrapolate with a lot of this, like in anthropology and archaeology. A lot of this is filling in the blanks, right? This is, all the evidence suggests this, right? So that's why we're going to talk about some of this as being theories. We don't have we have a really great evidence to support it, but, scientists and others like to hedge their bets, not saying that we always know everything for certain. New information can come up all the time, and I'll talk about that, new evidence. But anthropology, study human beings, behavior, biology, linguistics, social and cultural traditions, and so that is one way, it helps us tell us, not just how many people there were, where they were, but what they were like, right? This is really, anthropology gets into their social and cultural things. What made them a people, a unique group of people. But the other way, and this is especially for a lot of the pre-contact Native American history here, is archaeology, right? A study of ancient and recent human past through material remains, right? Their material culture, that's the term we use. Material culture is what people leave behind. So all your possessions, their material culture, right? And what we do is, as archaeologists, what they do is they dig this up out of the ground, and try to figure out how it was used. Some things have obvious uses. Other things you got to try to figure it out. But this also tells us about them, right? What kind of things did they have? Did they have just always weapons over time? Yeah. What do you think that would say if you found all these remains would always have weapons, and there's evidence of broken limbs and things like that? Well, they're probably a warrior race, all right, or this was a battlefield, that sort of thing. You get where I'm going with this. So just imagine things that you have, what people will think, hundreds, thousands of years that they found something of yours. What was its use, that sort of thing. And that's what archaeology does. And again, all this is an imperfect science because it is, not everything preserves in archaeology, right? It depends on where you are on the planet. Certain areas have a better ability to preserve archaeological remains. Why? It's based on climate, right? You go to wet climates, things are going to decay much, much quicker. You go to drier climates, colder climates, things are preserved longer, and so you can have more evidence in the archaeological record. And so again, this is a imperfect science, but again, we're always learning more stuff, especially with archaeology and other ways they're doing this, modern techniques. This is that it used to be you just have to stumble upon it when you're digging something up. Then you would find something in the ground and it would bring out a larger archaeological study. But new technologies such as satellites, drones, LiDAR, all these other things are helping us find new areas to search for, especially having satellites or drones. We've seen this here in the Americas. The evidence of Vikings in the North America. There was always known that they were here before Columbus and all that at times, but there was only thought to be a few settlements. But by going over satellite imagery, they call it space archaeology or satellite archaeology, you can begin to see the outlines of these settlements, right? Humans build in straight lines. There are no straight lines in nature. Only humans do that. And so you could see these straight lines, and if you're standing on them, you can't tell what that hill is, or you don't have the vantage point, the perspective. And so they're finding more and more. People do this actually all the time. There's a few groups online out there, legitimate groups that use Google Maps to do this. Google Satellite View. A couple years ago, just a side note on this. One of the he also happened to be a teacher, but he was part of this group. Was going through, he was given his area of the earth where he's looking at somewhere in the in the Arabian desert in Saudi Arabia, and he's going by, just slowly inching across on his computer screen at home. And what he found in the middle of the Arabian desert is this giant city that had been there but forgotten to time, right? That is, and it was only noticed because no one goes out in the middle of the desert, not to this location. And so they found it that way. It's wild, a lot of the U.S. and others have been fighting wars in the Middle East, so there's been a lot of drone usage from Turkey through Egypt and, again, what we call the Near East or Middle East. One of the side effects of that and for science and, history is they found in mountainous areas and other places like that, places where people wouldn't go today, they found ruins through this, and then they reported, and archaeologists and others go out there. In Iraq, not that long ago too, there was a drought, and the reservoir that had been there for long as people could remember, drained, and at the bottom of it was a giant palace of an ancient Mesopotamian kingdom. So it's things like that. There's always new information coming to light. So just keep that in mind. And although it's an imperfect science, there is still out there. Radiocarbon dating, this is really, how do we tell how old an object is? This is the way they do it. One of the ways they do it, radiocarbon dating. Everything has carbon-14 in it. Carbon-14 decays in a certain rate. It's half-light. And so the less of there is carbon-14 in it, the older it becomes, right? The more it has in it, the newer it is. And so you don't, you can just get the gist of what's doing here. And so this will tell us how old something is. Now, it gives us a time frame. It doesn't give us an exact date time, things like that. It can give you somewhere within a 500 years range. To us, that sounds like a very long time. And it is, based on our human, our lifespans. But in the grand scheme of things, knowing something within 500 years or so, accuracy, or even 1,000, is actually really good, right? Is really good on the mark there. And so that's one way they do it. There are new methods too, but they're all trying to, all of them more or less try to really read the decay, half-lives of different isotopes out there. And again, they're getting better and better at it in different ways. But, this is just an idea again. So again, it's an imperfect science, to say the least. Some other overview terms here. When we talk of culture, what do we mean? Well, culture is the way of life of a group of people, right? It's what they believe in, their behaviors, their symbols they use, what their values are. Now, this is really important. Culture is something that is passed along by communication and imitation, right? It's taught, in other words. Culture is not something you're born with. It's something you learn, right? When you were born, you did not know all the holidays, your religious traditions, whatever it may be. They were taught to you. How? By family, things like that, elders. That's what culture is. So culture is learned there. And it's, again, their entire, totality of their experience, right? It's transmitted between people, and it's shared by a common group there. Again, it's symbolic communication. The symbols have meanings to that group, right? So you can take a symbol, and here's one example. If I show you a picture of a bald eagle, Well, if you're from the United States, from the United States, grew up there with the history of that thing, or even new to it, you know that the bald eagle is a representative of America, right? So to you, that can mean the United States. It can represent the government, the flag, the culture, whatever you want it to be, right? Um, However, if I show that same picture to someone else on the other side of the world, what are they going to say? Well, it's a bird, right? I mean, why does it have more meaning to us than them, right? To those other people who aren't from the same culture. Same goes both ways, right? They'll have meanings for certain things that we don't. And it's because of how they were taught, right? The communication, the learned culture they have. In the next lecture video 2 for module 2, I'm going to pick up and show you another example of that. All right, see you there.